Hi and welcome to the head office of the Fire Brigade Union for another video update. We're joined once again by the Union's General Secretary Matt Wrack, who's here to discuss the Trade Union Bill, a government bill which has been described by many different groups as a fundamental threat to civil liberties. Matt, this bill, what are the key issues contained within it and why is it such a threat to us?
Well, it's a threat, first of all, Sam, because it's an attack on workers' rights. It's dressed up as an attack on union bureaucrats, general secretaries and so on, but actually it's an attack on ordinary working people and their ability to stand up for themselves on their pay, on their pensions, on their jobs and on their conditions at work. And you've got to ask, why are the government doing this at this time? They're doing it because they are planning to attack us for the next 5 years while they're in power over our pay. They've announced that they're going to freeze public sector pay again for another 5 years, and in order to force those attacks through, they want to limit our trade union rights. They want to limit workers' rights. So that's why they're doing it and why it's such a serious attack. They're proposing a whole raft of measures, and probably can't go into them all in detail here, but they're proposing, and people will have seen the new thresholds on ballots for industrial action. There are attacks on check-off arrangements. That's how you pay your union fees. There are attacks on the right to picket if you're involved, picket and protest if you're involved in industrial disputes. There are a whole raft of new red tape arrangements for unions that are designed to make it complicated, easy to get caught out, and to back that up, they've given new powers to the certification officer, including the powers to fine unions. So there's a whole raft of attacks in there.
Okay, Matt, let's pick out a couple in detail. You discussed thresholds and check-off. What exactly does that mean for our members on the ground? Okay,
well, in terms of the thresholds, members will know that in order to take industrial action, already we've got very complicated processes in place, the most complicated in the world, whereby we have to maintain lists of members correctly. Members have the right to vote. They have to vote at home. They're not allowed to vote in the workplace, for example, which is allowed in many countries. The new proposals would mean that 50% of the eligible group of members would have to vote in a ballot for that ballot to lead to lawful industrial action. Sounds reasonable on one level, but actually if you applied that rule to politicians, many politicians across the UK wouldn't be in their post. The government wouldn't be in office. That might not be a bad thing, but the majority of councillors don't meet those sort of thresholds. The Mayor of London didn't meet those sort of thresholds. So there are a whole number of areas where it's undemocratic. In addition, for those in like the fire service, what are described as important public services, there's then a second threshold that in addition to the first one, 40% of the total eligible workforce would have to vote yes in the ballot. So you've got to win a majority, you've got to win the 50% turnout, and then you've got to win 40% of the total, which does mean in some circumstances 80% would have to vote yes. So again, no politician is meeting those sorts of thresholds across the country. So it's setting different rules for unions, which are voluntary organisations, and it's the state, the government, the courts, the police, and the certification officer coming in to interfere in our voluntary organisations, and that's the thresholds. One of the other attacks is on check-off. Check-off is, again, a lot of these attacks are about financially penalising unions. And if you think about that, union money is members' money. So it's about finding ways to undermine the union, particularly using finance. So check-off is the way by which most members, certainly in the FBU, most members pay their union contributions. And it means that it's deducted at source. It's deducted from salary by voluntary agreement of the individual member, the union and the employer. So you can't do it if the employers don't agree, and yet the government is coming in, interfering in this and saying, we're telling you in the public sector that you're not allowed to collect, to reach that sort of agreement, you're not allowed to collect, and that's about making it harder for members to join the union, harder for the union to collect contributions, and therefore financially penalise us.
Matt, this bill has been heavily criticised by groups such as Liberty, Amnesty and the British Institute of Human Rights for its attack on freedom of speech. And I believe this even impacts on social media. What can you tell us about that?
Well, lots of firefighters will be aware that employers across the UK now have got increasingly draconian measures in place for dealing with social media. People talk about freedom of speech. This is a new area where the government is now going to interfere in trade unions. It's linked to the attack on picketing rights. So a lot of the proposals are aimed at the union itself, the General Secretary and so on. But if the union organises protests or pickets during industrial action, there are a whole raft of new requirements about notifying the police, the employer, anyone else who's interested, giving 14 days notice of any activity you're planning, having to nominate and designate a designated organiser with an armband, able to demonstrate through a letter to the police or anyone else who's interested that they are the designated person, making that person responsible, so potentially criminalising a whole raft of ordinary working people for protesting about pay, for example. That's what the threat exists. Then demanding that the union should set out what it intends to do in terms of Facebook, Twitter and so on. I mean, these are just, some of them are a bit bizarre, but I think in terms of what we've already seen in the workplace, you can see that the government is now stepping in to extend that control from the workplace over social media into a legislative arrangement.
Well, Matt, this is clearly an outrageous bill. How are we campaigning against it, and what can members out there do to get involved? Yeah,
well, we've got we're part of the TUC and the Scottish TUC, and we are campaigning with other unions to protest against this, to demand that the government backtracks on it, withdraws it, amends it, whatever. We'll be demanding that opposition parties vote against it, and we want to target individual MPs to explain why this is not helpful. It's not going to do anything to improve the position of workers in Britain. It's about attacking us. And as part of that, there's a whole series of lobbying events. There's a whole number of other campaigns being created. So as early as Monday the 14th of September, there is one campaigning event at Westminster. Then on the 13th of October, the Executive Council's agreed we'll encourage people to attend a rally at Westminster protesting against the trade union bill. And then on the 2nd of November, there is a big TUC lobby of Parliament, so we'll be urging members to get along to that. There'll be a lot more details out in bulletins and on the union's website, but I would encourage everyone to contact your MP, come along to one of those events, but just actually read through the detail of this, because it is staggering when you read the whole raft of what is being proposed. It is quite appalling what they're planning to do to our trade unions.
Matt, thanks very much. There's some dates for your diary. Please get involved in this very important campaign. All the information is going to go on our website, which is www.fbu.org.uk. And why not follow us on Twitter @FBU National. Until the next time, thanks very much, Matt.
Thanks, Sam.